hey, Northway, welcome to Behind and Beyond. It is Thanksgiving week. I'm here with Pastor Paul Hunter. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so fun. So very curious, just before we get started, you mentioned Piggly Wiggly, kind of your southern roots, which I love. When we would go on vacation as a kid, I used to think that name Piggly Wiggly was so hilarious.
You knew it?
I did, yes. Because
No way.
we would drive through North Carolina and South Carolina. And I remember as a kid thinking, that's hilarious. I actually bought a Piggly Wiggly t-shirt when I was in middle school.
Didn't. You're just making that up
that's
right
for
now.
real.
Did you really?
Team Piggly Wiggly forever. So that's
cool.
me wanting to be a Southerner, I guess.
Nice.
But what's any fun Thanksgiving traditions?
Yeah, the this may come across kind of sad, but the Thanksgiving traditions kind of went away when I moved here eight and a half years ago, right? Because family is still down there, and so we've tried to create new ones, and we've got a ton of people coming over Friday this week. But here's what's fun though. This is not trying to be all super spiritual pastor guy, but it has forced me in a good way to invite people that are not in my family. Right?
Yeah.
And so we say we should do that sort of stuff. And so Kate, my wife, she's so great with this stuff. And so we have tons of people, some folks from the church that don't have places to go, and some neighbors. So I don't know what's going to happen Friday. I'm smoking turkeys, though.
Wow. Oh, so you're a smoker guy.
I'm a smoker.
True confessions here, everyone. That's awesome. Well, on that note, we could dive into the sermon this week, which was fantastic,
Thanks.
by the way.
Appreciate it.
It is so crazy because you get to these 10 commandments that seem so simple. You mentioned, when I talked about do not murder at face value, that seems obvious. Stealing is the same.
Yeah.
I think most people, whether they're followers of Jesus or not, would say, yes, stealing is wrong. But then you took it in this whole other direction, a much deeper direction. How did you land there? What was your process kind of working through what it means to not steal, but at a deeper level as a follower of Jesus?
Yeah, in all honesty, so when I heard you do that with do not murder, I laughed so hard on the front row in Dormont because I thought, that's probably pretty true. And true story real quick. So Pastor Dave will send, the folks who need to know on staff, the schedule, a couple months in advance once he gets it built. And I had told Kate, and I'm like, oh, it's going to be so fun. We're going to do 10 Commandments. How's that going to be? And bringing it into a modern light. And I remember thinking that. And she brought up, oh my gosh, who's going to do not steal? True story. She said, how do you do that one? And we laughed and just thought, oh, that'll be so great. And then I let it. So God has a fun sense of humor. But it's a great question because I felt your pain. I don't know if you really felt that way.
For sure.
But I thought, how do I do this? This is so ridiculous. And if you did get a chance to watch the sermon, I said, though, I made a little light of it, but I did start thinking about what Pastor Dave and you guys have been teaching. And so I will say that this sermon, and it should always be, but sometimes it's not, but it was deeply personal for me. And when I started going, okay, so this is what they've been saying, that through line of the commandments, we're not meant to keep the commandments are meant to keep us. And then going in, okay, what does Jesus say? About how has he enhanced this? And to my knowledge, I wasn't able to find, with do not murder, for example, he actually spoke, you've heard it said, but I didn't find really concrete things that Jesus enhanced stealing, so I had to really broaden that. And we had just taught on, I mentioned this in the sermon, we had just taught on that talents parable from Rooted, all right? And I just thought, that's it. And we focus so much in that text and so much of the things that Jesus talks about. When I started looking through the lens of stealing, I thought, wait, these things, it enhances it. And I know we'll talk about money probably here, and a lot of the response I've got has been so wonderful, and naturally a lot of it has been around money, and I appreciate you guys when you reach out and you tell me these awesome stories. But I want to really drill down to say that God was dealing with me more on that time and your giftedness. Because that is it is so important. It's as important as the money piece. And I know our human nature is to really highlight and focus because I know I went pretty strong on the money piece. I know, but that other stuff can't be lost. So it was tricky. Yeah. It was tricky up until the Thursday run through, and we were looking. You guys were so good to help me piece it together. It was hard.
It's challenging, and I loved that you took it to a place of money, but then also beyond. And I think in my own human nature related to you so much because time is something that feels like we have so little of. And I tend to bury that like deep and hold on to it really tightly. And that was super convicting. How has this kind of been at work in your life personally? You mentioned it was deeply personal.
Yeah.
You shared a little bit about your neighbor, but
Yeah, and I tried to do that because I knew that it would be hard to hear. I knew we would tend to, because of our nature, and rightly so, focus in and only hear the money piece. I hope you saw like me trying to build that out. But that's why I wanted to tell really deep stories. And even with my acquaintance, the elderly lady, and I had some fun around that, but like that is true. I didn't enhance that and make it up. I wanted everyone to go, look, I'm battling this stuff. And when I dug into this, I realized God brought that to my mind. And I wrestled like, do I be that honest? Like, do I tell people that one of their pastors, drives a different direction? So my street that I live on is a big horseshoe. And so you can come in the bottom of the hill and go to my house and I never have to pass her. And I was like, God brought that and convicted me like, okay, big guy. You want to be all big and bold on this stuff, but like, do you remember her? You were great the first 2 years you lived here, but how many times have you given her your time? And like right now, even like I'm feeling like kind of my nose starting to burn a little bit because like I'm just like so ashamed and convicted. But that's the beautiful thing of Jesus,
it is.
Right?
It is.
So we look at the law, but Jesus came and he enhanced that, and there's grace and truth. And that's the beautiful thing of Jesus. And so I'm looking for the ways to get back out. Of course, when we're recording this today, it was raining, so I got out of it. But, how do I go back in? One of the things that she's asking me right now, she caught me a week ago. It was like looking at something on her cellar door thing, and I haven't gone up there. And that's my call. And we can say, oh, that's silly. That's not. No, that's the practical application. And I'm stealing time from that lady. And God put her into my life. So I could go on and on and on because it was so personal to me, and I appreciate you highlighting that, and hopefully it spoke to folks.
When you teach, you're always learning way more than you teach, and often that conviction comes fast and hard, and it's, of course, you're going to see that woman like 15 times this week because that's how God works. But it really is, I think, just living in step with the Spirit, and when you feel those promptings,
right,
you have that choice. Do I drive the other way or do I go this way? And we all have those places. I think even right now, you're probably thinking of an area, whether it's with your finances or with your time or with your talents and resources that you have in terms of gifting, that you might feel your heart beating a little faster, or the Holy Spirit saying, go up to that person, give generously to that person. You even said, like, when you hear a need, do you offer to meet it, or is it just like, oh, I'm praying with you? And how many times I know in my own life do I feel the Holy Spirit speak like, oh, you could step in there, but you just push it down or walk the other way, or we're selfish, entitled.
And I'd said that's why I said in the sermon, and then the next few times that weren't broadcast, I drilled down even deeper. I think I actually repeated it 3 times in a row where I said, just take a step. And I said, this afternoon, take the step. Because I don't know if you're like me, I'll get convicted and I'll go, oh man, and then I'll come, okay, I need to do that. And then I don't do anything with it. And then a month later, I hear something I remember. It's like, why can't we go home this afternoon and I go up and just check on my neighbor? So I'm going to tell you a really cool thing about this. I had a young lady reach out yesterday morning, and she sent me a text and said that as a result of the sermon, that she came home and was really convicted. And she said, so I remembered you saying, though, like, take a simple, small step. Just don't go extreme, right? And so she sat down and prayed. Like, what? And I get convicted on this. Like, I'm like, really? You actually did that? Like, oh my gosh, you really, And I was so excited. And she's telling this long text. Short of it is she prayed. And this young mom that she has an acquaintance with popped into her mind. And she said, okay. And so I don't know, she didn't go in all the details of how she knew this, but she sent through Venmo this young single mom money for rent. Say, my nose is burning again. I can't look at you. Yeah. And then she sends me the reply from this mom. And this mom had said, I've been praying and I have faith in the Lord. I know Jesus. And she wrote in there, I've been praying for God to provide. And I knew he was going to come through, and I was holding on to faith, but I just didn't know how. And then all of a sudden you send me rent, and I'm in a really hard spot right now, and you have no idea. And it was something the effect of your act just showed me that God really is real in my life. Now, come on.
Come on.
Right?
That's where it gets fun. That's where
Right?
you're like living in obedience. When you talked about freedom and flourishing, there might be tangible blessings, but there is nothing like being in the center of God's will like that. And I think that's a really practical step that if you're listening today, that I just want to challenge you to take. Like, would you take 5 or 10 minutes and just be still before the Lord and ask him to show you what this looks like? And you just to see the blessing on the other side of her obedience, both for her and the woman that God provided for. Like, that's
the church.
It's amazing.
That's the church.
It is.
That's the whole point of why we do what we do. It's not the buildings. It's not the Sunday morning experience. All that is wonderful. But it is what you do when you go out. How do you love your neighbors? That's our live, work, play, right?
Yeah.
That's there for a reason. It's where you live. It's where you work. How can you use it? And I was super convicted on that, like you, that time piece. I'm so, the entitlement. I feel so entitled. And it's easy for us to do it too, or if you work in ministry or nonprofit, like when I come home, it is a joy in my heart to love on people that get to do what we do and get paid for it, right? Like, this is just incredible. I pinch myself every day for 20 years. But I find myself falling into this trap of, well, my neighbors don't count. And that's so bad to say. But if I'm getting really honest with you, that's how I practically live.
Yep.
And then I step out of Dormont's building and I pass by people when I go to grab my lunch and I just shut it off. But no, I'm supposed to do that every single moment, asking the Lord, God, through the power of your Holy Spirit, who are people you're going to put in my path? And you said it. It is the highest high when you are used by God to meet that need.
Yes.
And then you don't even, like, so this one was money. Like, here we go, it's money again. But like, that one was money. But like, she doesn't even care that it cost her. And I mean, rent's not cheap. I'm guessing this was probably $1,000 gift. Like, this is nuts. She had the ability. And here's the cool part too, right? So clearly this young lady and her husband have been living with margin.
Right.
I mentioned that.
Yep.
And they were able to do it, you know? So like, don't get tripped up on or get depressed. So like, oh man, that's a cool story, but I can't do that. Well, start somewhere. Maybe it's maybe it's the time.
Yep.
And then be really aggressive towards maybe the money pieces so that in a couple years you can be faithful in those areas. Don't get depressed or feel there's no hope to it.
Right. Well, and I think, we're entering into this holiday season, Thanksgiving this week, and then into Christmas. And I know for me, that idea of entitlement and materialism can come in just so hard at the holidays because you see all the stuff, you feel pressure to buy all this stuff for yourself or for your family. You fill your time with all of this stuff, and all of a sudden that margin, especially in this season, could just totally go away.
Goes
So
away.
how would you encourage us, especially maybe with the holidays in mind, to sort of break that mentality of entitlement and live really intentionally toward that place of margin?
Yeah. It's a great question. I thought about this, and it popped into my head when I was preaching. Yeah, you remember those moments? Yeah, it's like two people talking. Right now they're thinking, are our pastors schizophrenic? But like, there's like two, and I thought I should have written that in. And I'm not trying to be the Northway guy here, but like, one practical thing is that comfort and joy.
That's evident. Yes.
I thought about that. So like, that's probably wherever your location is. Most likely it's a toy. I think we all do the one warm coat, gently used coats that go to these partnerships. Well, what if a small step for you would be to grab your little ones or to grab your teenagers? Anybody got teenagers out there? That's fun times. And that's another podcast for another day. But like, what if you sat them down and just said, hey, so what we're going to do is we're just going to take, and don't do anything nuts.
Right.
Like maybe for you this year is, hey, we're going to take $10 off what we normally spend for everybody. And we're going to go and let's jump on this wish list and buy a couple toys. Like, it's just the little things that you can take steps in. And I don't want to let us off the hook though, right? Again, I want to say, so my reply to that young lady, I told the story. I was like, man, thank you. I needed to hear this. This was so challenging. And then I said, that was step one. Now what you do is you keep praying and say, okay, what's the next thing? And don't forget your time. Don't forget the giftedness that God has given you.
Right.
Because it's all around us.
Yes.
And being a part of such an awesome church like this, we have so many opportunities. Maybe there is, Not to Shine is coming up. Maybe it's like, oh, I'd always heard of that. And boy, God's doing it. That's really cool. I see the videos. I heard Amanda talk about, well, sign up.
Yeah, right.
Give your time and go. Oh my gosh, I don't know if I could do that. I mean, that's a beautiful thing, but I don't know. Will I be in the way? No, you won't.
No, those are such tangible things. And I loved what you said a second ago about entitlement and even the comfort and joy and how we can engage in that. But also if you're a parent and have kids, how powerful it is, one, for them to see you model living a life of open-handedness, but two, to do that together. And they're growing up in a culture that just pushes toward entitlement in all those ways, and to show them, hey, we're going to take a portion of what we would normally spend on each other and use it this way, or we're going to go tonight to Shine together, and we're going to serve together and give up our time and, not invest so much in soccer this week or dance this week. We're going to live differently. And for them to see that modeled, because I think they're just growing up in a time where it is hold on to all your time. And often as parents, we foster it. You're entitled to your sports and to your electronics and to your money and all of those things.
100%. I was just thinking that when you said it, like, I won't put this on anybody else, but if I really look at it from a good place, wanting to provide for my kids and all these great things, I look at them like, wait, that's way more, be careful how I say this, so it doesn't, but like, that's way more of an Americanized thought towards Christianity than it really is a biblical concept of Christianity. Christmas presents are bad.
No,
okay?
right.
We're not saying that, all right?
I want my Christmas presents.
Yeah. So please, soccer and sports, and half my college was paid for because of basketball. And so I'm so thankful for that. But I just deeply believe that when I keep on to hear this, if you take those little tangible steps in a year, you're going to be blown away by where you are. And maybe you're spending maybe you spent 25% in 2 years on Christmas and then where you were. Whereas today, here's the important part. Whereas today you look at that and go, extreme, I know I shouldn't feel this way, but that's really kind of depressing and not fun. I get it. Okay, let's just not super spiritualize this stuff. But in a year, 2 years, you're taking these little steps. You'll find yourself so far down the road and go, I don't even notice, I couldn't have accepted that 2 years ago, but now by taking these small things, look at what my kids are saying, look at their speech, look at how they're doing, look at my life. We're totally okay with this, and we're so much more full. That's that tension of sanctification, how God starts to change you. I want to tell you this one on the money piece. So I laid it all out there in the sermon. I might as well lay this one out too. So 2 paychecks ago, we have our tithe divided up just because of our mortgage payment bill, and so it's not just crazy stretched on one. We just kind of look at it that way, and it was the big tithe check. Okay, for us, it was the bigger one on the. You follow me?
Yeah, got it.
And Kate was at Laurelville with kids, and I'm by myself. I was like, oh shoot, I have not paid bills. You ever had that happen? And so I get on my computer real quick, on Saturday morning. I start looking, and I'm doing it, and I'm like, oh, why did this get tight? I mean, we were there's money in savings and there's this and that, but I'm like, ew, what happened this check? You ever had those moments, And I'm like, oh, this is this is also the one we're going to supposed to give our tithe a little bigger. Now, you heard me preach, and I'm all the money guy, and I'm out there challenging everybody. 2 weeks ago, I had an internal battle with God over do I really need to do this? And I'm trying to, well, God, what if I gave a couple $100 less? And so it's a little free. You don't want me to live tight or what, but it is a faith issue. And then I'd committed to that. And I tell our people at Dormont all the time, you ought to notice it. So I don't want to get in trouble here. I'm not really concerned if you give 10%. Maybe you can't do that. Maybe for you to start, it's 0.5%. I just believe you ought to notice it. And when you quit noticing, then you bump and you bump and you bump. Because it's a faith journey. And I remember, it's so frustrating. God's like, dude, that's what you say to your people all the time. And I didn't even remember this sermon. That's the cool thing. What if I had not done it and then I had to stand up in front of our people.
Yep.
That other voice, the schizophrenic voice, you think now the conviction while you're preaching, and I did it. Amanda, I'm sitting here. My car's still running.
Yep.
I got this really nice clothes on. We're still buying Christmas.
Yep.
I didn't lose my house. We're having I'm cooking 2 turkeys for Thanksgiving because we got so many people coming over. Like, I am so blessed.
Yes.
And God taught me through that, right? So I'm just trying to be super honest with you. Like, I battle it every single time.
And that's so appreciative. I so appreciate your transparency in that, because we've all had those moments of like, well, what if I just do it this way? Or, I'm not going to be legalistic about it, or I'm not going to, and it really is a heart issue. And I love where you brought your sermon. And I think just to kind of put a closing point on this today, that idea of gratitude, and even it's that act. I actually read something last week, and I loved how this woman put this, because she said gratitude is an act of spiritual warfare.
That's really good.
And you're coming against that idea that I don't have enough, or God's trying to take something from me, or I'm going to live this like depressing, impoverished life. And that is such a lie. But when we look back, whether you're looking back 2 weeks, or even like you said, when you look back 2 years and see what God has done, when you live in that posture of gratitude, I loved your example about your car, could relate to that in your sermon, but that's how different is it to say, wow, thanks God that this is still working and I haven't had to buy a new car. It
was a total different mindset.
Yes.
And I think I said it in the one that was broadcast, and I actually felt really guilty going home. I need to apologize to Pastor Dave. It was like an exaggeration for the sake of effect to get some laughter. Yep. Like, hey, I'm going to make you laugh so you soften this next really hard part. But like when Dave talked about that a couple years ago, and I think I said in the sermon, the one that got broadcast out, was like, I said, like, oh, that is so stupid. Like, I didn't think, Dave, that it was stupid. Okay, I was trying to make it, but like, I did have this intern, right? I felt so bad on the ride home that day. I was like, I got to change that in my sermon. That sounded so bad. But I did like have this intern. I'm like, really? Like, you're a new pastor. Like, that's the big strategy. But when I started doing it, I don't know, man. There's stuff in the Bible that I'm like, I don't see it. And it's like this tension, and it totally changed. The car is just a small thing. I'm like, I love my car now. Isn't that nuts?
It is nuts.
Like 2 years later, I'm like, I don't want to get anything different. Like, it's become totally this fun thing. Like,
your heart and your mindset. And And so I think that's just, as we wrap up, our encouragement to you this week. Obviously, we're all going to be celebrating Thanksgiving, but would you take intentional time, whether it's by yourself or with your family or your spouse or your kids, and just stop and thank God? Verbally thank Him, write a list, celebrate around the table, like name what He has done so you have that marker moment to come back to. And I know for me, when we reflect back on the year, it's emotional. It just all comes like God provided here and here and here. And we saw breakthrough here. And even in this hard time, we saw God show up. And so practice gratitude this week. Use it as spiritual warfare to come against whatever is coming against you, because it will change us. So, Paul, thanks for being with us.
No, thank you. Thanks for what you do for our church. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Have a great week, everybody.
Awesome. Bye, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.